Hello, so now it's time to build the second case for the Game Boy Mega Machine. That means I've just got to do this again. Lovely. As you saw in the last video, I've already started soldering some things with some help from Mel as well. Thank you very much. There's a lot of soldering. Now I've just got to put them together. It's pretty dodgy doodles, but most of the panels have pieces of the picture overhanging, factories in the distance, and you've got clouds and rains and lightning and then stars and spaceships up at the top. I don't know, I just thought it would be nice like adding a little bit of detail because it's not as noticeable in the bottom one, even though there is a picture overall. I just figured I should make it a little bit more joined between the rows on this one since I'm building it all at the same time. Yeah, after a grueling few days, I've got the next synth voice of the Game Boys plugged in. There's one that keeps on crashing. Got to figure that out. There's probably some weird soldering going on somewhere. I'm always like trying to solve problems further down. There's always a problem. I spent nearly a whole day making ribbon cables. As you can see at the back, it looks like an absolute mess, and one day in the future it will all be cleaned up and looking neat, but that's for another time after I've done all the changes that are required for this machine. So now I'm going to solve another problem which has been looming over me ever since I started building this and figuring out what to do. It was one of the main stepping stones that I knew I needed to cross at some point, and I thought it was going to be very difficult. Basically, it's how to deal with polyphony. So here is the Game Boy Mega Machine. It looks absolutely wonderful, and one day it shall look like this. This is the 4 rows of Game Boys that have been built, and basically these are all currently, this may change, but they're all currently running MGB. It's a ROM software that reads MIDI and then plays out on all of the 4 sound channels on the Game Boy the notes that you want. You can actually play it polyphonically within MGB as a free voice polyphonic synthesizer. However, I was not tempted to do this because I really like the idea of the interactions between separate machines being polyphonic between each other. So what I'm doing is I'm hardwiring all of these 3 oscillators within the Game Boy in unison. Basically there's 8 Game Boys with 3 oscillators in them each, 36 audible oscillators and 8 noise channels in this single line of Game Boy. That's all going to be playing literally one note. It can be different octaves, but all in all one note. The problem I have is I need all of these to be able to respond separately to different key presses on the keyboard. I'm sending MIDI out of the keyboard into all of these at the same time. Basically, I needed something, a like box in the middle, that would send each of these different key presses to a different MIDI channel. Either MIDI channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, or so on if you wanted to. And then each of these are designated a different MIDI channel, which they read. So this ends up being button press 1, this be button press 2, and so on. So then it ends up splitting it into a polyphonic synthesizer. And then it'll also split all of the analog circuitry and synths and polyphonic envelope generators and stuff like that. But this was a problem because I couldn't find anything on the internet that did this, except for a couple of things that required a lot of menu diving, and it was basically using a computer and having to boot it up, and it just wouldn't work. I really wanted something on boot up that would just work, and it was just made for this. I was nowhere near good enough to code. So yeah, initially I was going to use this thing called a MIDI gal, which is like a screen, and you have to menu dive to go and do this parameter. And ideally I didn't really want screens on here or any menu diving. It's not really what I want, even though there's a load of Game Boy screens. But so I kind of reached out to people on Patreon to see if anybody would help me solve this issue. And amazingly, in a day, Yuha was able to code a piece of code for the Arduino to do exactly what I required on boot up, which is amazing. So I had a little chat with him, and it went like this.
I'm Joaquin Vegas, and I'm a software tester, and I've been doing software testing for embedded systems for like a year now.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Did you already have something that was similar to this that you were like, I know what to do?
So this is kind of the official audio shield.
Yeah.
And it's nice when I'm prototyping. Essentially, I just code it and hope that it will compile right when you put it on your like tiny Arduino.
Yeah, tiny Arduino.
Yeah. So I use the library. I mean, that's the main part. If you start like kind of writing stuff to the serial port and parsing your MIDI messages and constructing them, you end up doing a lot of work that can already be done by this library, which is called the 47 Effects MIDI library. So I just use that one, which is a really smart. It's a smart architecture, and it makes coding quite easy, because what it does is you pull the serial port and it gets the bytes and it will parse them for you, and then it has these functions which are called something like on note on, which means it's a kind of callback function for the note on events, and then just calls my one function where I do whatever I want it to do when it receives the MIDI in, like note on message.
And you said that you were going to modify this slightly for your use. What did you have in mind for that?
I do have it now. It's in my setup right now. This is taking input from a drum machine, and the output is going to Volca samples. Because the Volca samples, each sample has its own channel, which kind of doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm doing is I'm actually reading in notes, and then those notes, I just pick like middle C and the 10 next ones. They will just be sent to different channels.
Thank you very much for this. It was I was amazed that you managed to do it in a few hours.
Yeah.
I would have been stuck doing this for ages.
No, but I'm doing it for 6 years, so it's kind of habit.
Right, I'm going to go and finish building this and finish the video. Thanks very much, man. We'll speak soon.
Speak to you soon. Good luck.
Goodbye.
So right here is the circuit quickly put together. It's basically an Arduino, the MIDI input circuit and the output circuit, and a switch to select between the modes. So this Arduino has got Juha's Arduino code. It's got the 3 modes on this Arduino code, and all of the 3 modes are literally on this switch. The middle wire is connected to 5 volts, and then the 2 outer wires are connected to D2 and D3 pins, which is kind of like telling the Arduino to switch modes. So this is the first mode that Juha made. The first note you play down, it's that note, and then you add more. So that's over the 6 channels. If you can see up here, there's lights. There are lights lighting up. And note, this is actually a very easy, cheap kind of kit that you can already buy called the MIDI Muso. The link is in the description. It's basically a 6-channel MIDI to CV. But right now I'm using this just as the 6 channels wired up to 4 fart boxes. So 4 channels, even though the Game Boy has 6. I haven't got enough. So this mode, you can actually play it monophonically. Because the first finger you put down is the first channel, second finger you put down is the second, and so on. But that means the first channel is always going to be voice 1, which means it actually can act like a monophonic synth, and it's actually useful. So let's play, say you play down 2 notes here, you can actually play a monophonic sequence on top of it with the third voice. Which is not actually how it would work in a normal kind of polyphonic setting, because there would be note runoffs. So let's flick over to the proper polyphony mode, and basically the first note you press is channel 1, and then you can press any other note, even if it's the same one. It flicks over to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. You can see it running along here. That means if you play notes, they overhang over the top of each other like this. See, it sounds like a polyphonic synth now, like. And then also you flick it over to this side, you get unison mode, which means that all of the mini channels play the same. So now you've got a big fat sound of just a big fat polyphonic thing, and this is when all 48 Game Boys will play the same thing. So this is what I've ended up with. It's got a MIDI input, it's got the mode switch, and then it's got 6 identical MIDI outputs. And all of the Game Boy rows listen to different MIDI channels, so I can plug them into any of these and it works. On the back, there's that kind of random bit of scrappy kind of strip board, and also a MIDI splitter. It's just a MIDI splitter that I had lying around that I wasn't using much, so it kind of sped everything up by literally just bolting that to the back. And please remember, when you hear this, it's kind of like listening to an analog synth without any filters or any VCAs or attack and delay stuff. Basically, I'm only at the oscillator part, so I'm trying to keep it all nice and in tune. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to put this in. So with all that being said, I've got the 4 voices set up, all with different pitches on all of the different kind of like columns using the CPU modulators. I've got about 5 LFOs coming from over there to different places. And yeah, I'm just going to play for a bit and just try different sounds and ideas, because I haven't actually really played with this yet. I've only played it since you saw just earlier me actually testing out the different voices. So yeah, let's give it a try. That's part 7 of the Game Boy Mega Machine. The next step I need to do is make a digital patch bay, which is kind of like, not really a patch bay, it's like a 64 by 64 kind of switch thing that basically controls all of the routing of the analog circuitry that I haven't built yet, and it's going to be a heck of a lot of stuff. So yeah, I don't know when that's going to be, maybe in the next couple of weeks, but I will be doing frequent vlogs as I usually do on the Game Boy Mega Machine over on my Patreon, because needless to say, this project wouldn't be possible without the help of Patreon supporters, as well as kind of like helping legitimize me spending such a ridiculous amount of time on such a silly project. But yeah, nonetheless, it's going to get done and it's going to be massive. Woo! But yeah, I've been Luke Mum No Computer, and until next time, don't be scared to try it, and see you soon. Bye.